I think a part of what needs to be acknowledged now, and this is 2020. It doesn't mean this is what it is for certain here on out, but we are absolutely in a time where we've talked about in Tough Talks that everyone has work to do. Everyone needs education right now. But more to rounding that out, there are many more of us who are activated as educators right now. Like it or not, we've been called to be educators because parents have to take on a new level of being an educator simply because the times have changed. We all have to take on new levels of being educators, even outside of schooling, as we think of it, simply because this is a world where we're enacting so much change upon, and we are faced with so much change happening. It's a matter of educating each other all along the way, whether it's about racial and social injustice, or it's just about vocabulary, or it's about understanding economics as they are in the 21st century. It's no longer just the world of teach teenagers how to balance a checkbook. There's a lot more that needs to be considered and things like that. That you are an educator. I want to clarify that you are an educator. Real teacher is certainly an idea that I know exactly what that means and how that feels, because I had plenty of people that helped me to qualify myself as not a real teacher for a long time. But that can be its own thing. It's almost like, I'll get into that later, but it can be its own thing is what I'll say to it, that you are an educator. You are an educator. That's without a doubt. So, and the other side of it, with this being a big cultural movement and a greater acknowledgement of not just things wrong in this country, but things wrong with systems, foundations, institutions in this country, including educational institutions. Not just from the way they're structured, but from the material that is qualified and deemed to be the curriculums for many institutions. There's been a great progressive adjustment in education systems, I'd say over the last maybe 20 to 30 years, I think it's fair to say, in allowing for a little bit more liberty for teachers, educators to develop their own details within curriculums. I'm like, well, here's some other stories that you can read that still qualify for this. Well, here's some other music we can work through that qualifies for this. Here are some other topics we can research that qualify for this. Or here are some other even experiments within science classrooms that we can do that qualify for this. That we've had a lot of progressive ideas and innovation on education. We're in a big moment where the gas pedal has a brick on it that we can't move. And it is, again, the technological and cultural disparities, as well as trying to adjust the material being presented and how it's presented, as well as trying to adjust the systems used in presenting it, whether it's hybrid learning or in-site learning or off-site learning or what have you. Just there's so many different levels to it. And the other big thing to acknowledge in this that we've been able to at least acknowledge within our check-ins, this is, unfortunately, in the end, it ends up being everyone having to choose their own paths. It's like we're all reading the same book, but we all still have to decide what page we're going to flip to on our own. If you remember those books, I think they still make those for kids if they still read books. And that really reigns not just across from, not even just from state to state where things are extremely different in all of these dynamics we're talking about, but even from county to county, from school to school, depending on what type of institution you're in. It's a Rubik's Cube in terms of how many different rules any individual is having to play by while managing the many different layers and levels that we're talking about and adjusting.